Okay, I had to change spots before I got into chapter 8 of Pippi in the South Seas. It's called Pippi Talks Sense into a Shark. There she is. Uh-oh, what's Pippi gonna do? Good thing she's a fictional character, because she's kind of naughty. Anyway, very early the next morning, Pippi and Tommy and Annika crawled out of their hut. The other children had been up even earlier. They were already sitting under a coconut tree, excitedly waiting for their new friends to come out and play. They talked in rapid kurkurdut and laughed. All their teeth were flashing with happiness. The whole crowd trooped down to the beach with Pippi at the head. Tommy and Annika jumped up and down with delight when they saw the beautiful white sand where they could dig themselves down, and the blue sea, which looked so inviting. A coral reef a short distance from the island served as a seawall, and inside the water lay still, and it was like a mirror. All the children threw off their clothes and were in their swimsuits and were shouting and laughing, and they dashed out to the water so they could go swim. Afterwards, they rolled around in the white sand, and Pippi and Tommy and Annika agreed that it would have been much nicer to have It would be much nicer to have a beach like this at the Villa Kula. Then Pippi dug herself down into the sand up to her neck so that only her freckled face and two red pigtails stuck out, and they looked quite funny too. All the children settled themselves down into a circle to talk to her. "Hey, will you tell us about the children of the land where you come from?" said Momo to her freckled face. "Ah, they love pletification." "It's called multiplication," said Annika. "And besides," she said, somewhat miffed, "no one could say that we love it." "All the northern children love pletification," Pippi insistently and stubbornly exclaimed. "Northern children become frantic if other northern children don't every day get a large dose of this pletification." She didn't have the strength to continue in broken kurkurdut language, but switched over to her own language. "If you hear one of the northern children where I come from cry, you can be sure that the school is burned down, or that the school holiday is declared, or that the teacher has forgotten to give the children homework and pletification. And let's not even talk about summer vacation. That brings on such tears and wailing that you'd wish that you were dead before you had to hear it. No one is dry-eyed when the school gate slams for the summer. All those children slowly head for their homes, singing sad songs, and they can't keep themselves from sobbing when they think that will be several months before they get any pletification to do again. Oh yes, it's a misery, but like a witch I can't even imagine," said Pippi, and she sighed deeply. "Ha ha!" said Tommy and Annika. Momo didn't quite understand what pletification was and wanted to have a more detailed explanation. For that matter, no one understood what pletification was because it was a made-up word. Anyway, Tommy was just about to try to explain it, but Pippi got ahead of him. Yeah, you see, it's like this. 7 times 7 equals 102. Fun, eh? No, because 7 times 7 is 49, interjected Annika. Remember that we're on this island now, said Pippi. Here we have an entirely different and much more flourishing climate. So 7 times 7 gets to be a bunch more. Here, bah, said Tommy and Annika again. The arithmetic math lesson was interrupted by Captain Longstocking, who came to announce that he and the whole crew of the Kirkerduts were going off to another island for a couple of days to hunt a wild boar. Captain Longstocking was in the mood for some fresh boar steak. The Kirkerdut women were also to go along to scare out the boar with wild cries. That meant that the children would be staying behind alone on the island. I hope you won't be sad because of this, said Captain Longstocking. I'll give you 3 guesses, said Pippi. The day I hear that some children are sad because they have to take care of themselves without grown-ups, well, that's the day I learn the whole plettification table backwards. I'll swear to that. Ah, that's my girl, said Captain Longstocking. Then he and all his grown-up subjects, armed with shields and arrows, got into big canoes and paddled away from the island. Pippi rounded her hands into a megaphone and shouted after them, "May peace be with you, but if you aren't back by my 15th birthday, I'll send out an SOS over the radio." When they were alone, Pippi and Tommy and Annika and Momo and Moana and all the other kids looked happily at one another. They were going to have a whole wonderful South Sea island all to themselves for a couple of days. "What are we going to do?" said Tommy and Annika. "Well, first we'll get our breakfast down from the trees," said Pippi, and like a flash, she was in a coconut tree shaking coconuts down. All the children gathered the breadfruit and the bananas. Pippi made a fire on the beach, and over it she roasted the wonderful fruit. All the children settled around in a circle and had a substantial breakfast consisting of roasted breadfruit, coconut milk, and bananas. There were no horses on the island, so all the native children were very interested in Pippi's horse. Those who dared to go for a ride on him. Moana said that one day she would like to go to the northern land, where there were such strange animals as this. Mr. Nelson wasn't anywhere in evidence, for he had gone off on his own adventure. Everyone believed he had some friends there. "Well, what are we going to do now?" asked Tommy and Annika, when riding was no longer fun. "Children, do you children want to see our caves?" wondered Momo. "Oh, they most certainly want to see them caves." "Yeah," said Pippi, "show me the caves." So around the island was a coral island, and on the south side of the coral cliffs, they plunged straight into the sea. And there were most wonderful caves had been dug out by the waves over hundreds of years. Some were down at the water's line and filled with water, but there were others higher up on the cliffs, and there the children played. In the largest cave, they kept a big supply of coconuts and other delicacies. To get there was quite an undertaking, though. First, they had to climb carefully down the steep side of the cliff and hang on to rocks which jutted out. Otherwise, they could have plunged down right into the sea. Any place on the island that wouldn't have mattered. But at this particular spot, there were plenty of sharks who wanted to eat the little children. In spite of this danger, all the children had fun diving for oysters. But then someone always had to stay on guard and shout, "Shark! Shark!" as soon as they saw a fin in the distance. In the big cave, the children also kept a supply of shimmering pearls, which they had found inside of the oysters. They used them to play marbles with, and they had no idea that they would be worth any amount of money in Europe or America. Captain Longstocking used to take along a few pearls now and then when he went off to buy stuff. He would trade the pearls for things he thought his subjects would need. But on the whole, he felt that his loyal islanders were well off right where they were, living the lifestyle that they always had. And the children gaily continued to play marbles with the precious pearls. Annika was horror-stricken when Tommy said to her that she would have to climb along the cliff to the big cave. The first part didn't seem so bad. There was quite a broad ledge to walk upon, but it got narrower, so it went from wide to very narrow. And the last few feet to the cave, you had to scramble and climb and hang on the best you could. "Never," said Annika, "never, I could never do that." To climb along the cliff, there was hardly anything to hold on to. And below, the sea was filled with sharks waiting for you to fall down in. Now that wasn't Annika's idea of fun. Tommy was annoyed. No one should bring their little sisters along to the South Seas, he said as he scrambled along the cliff wall. "Look at me, you only have to go like this." And then there was a loud plop as Tommy fell into the water. Annika screamed. Even the other children were terrified. "Shark! Shark!" they cried and pointed out towards the sea. There was a fin clearly visible above the surface, heading in the direction of poor Tommy. But there was another plop, and that was Pippi jumping in. She reached Tommy about the same time as the shark did. Terrified, Tommy was screaming at the top of his lungs. He thought he felt the shark's sharp teeth scrape against his leg. But just in that same instant, Pippi grabbed that bloodthirsty beast with both of her hands and lifted him out of the water. "Don't you have any shame in you?" she asked the shark. And the shark looked around, surprised and ill at ease. He wasn't able to breathe above the surface of the water. "You promise to never do that again, and I'll let you go," said Pippi gravely. With all her force, she flung him far, far out onto the sea. He lost no time in getting away from there, and he decided to head for the Atlantic Ocean instead. In the meantime, Tommy had managed to scramble up onto a small plateau. That's a flat piece of land. There we go. And he sat there trembling all over. His leg was bleeding. And then Pippi came up. She behaved very strangely. First, she lifted Tommy up in the air, and then she hugged him so hard that he lost his breath. Then all of a sudden, she let go of him and sat down on the cliff. She put her head in her hands and she cried. Pippi actually cried. Tommy and Annika and All of the children looked at her, for they were surprised and scared and frightened. Are you crying because Tommy almost got eaten up? No, answered Pippi crossly, and she wiped her eyes. I'm crying because the poor little hungry shark gets no breakfast today. That's the end of chapter 8, and I'll be reading chapter 9 soon.